Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Fire Force Episode 15. So, first things first, we got a new opening and ending, and starting off with the opening, I was definitely taken off guard a little by the fact that they went for an English dubbed metal cover for the opening song. It's not necessarily uncommon or unheard of in order for anime to do this, but it was just one of those things where you kind of go and you expect like a pretty much Japanese like Japanese vocals going in, and then you're bombarded with a pretty much an English like pretty much metal cover, a metal cover with the opening song, and it's like, okay, so that happened, and and pretty much knowing this go and as far as the opening and ending, it's so, and knowing all this, this is probably where I'm gonna get lambasted a bit in probably the likes or probably the likes, dislikes, and maybe even a few comments. But especially considering the firm's like dislike ratio on the song on Funimation's YouTube channel. But I here's the thing about this opening. For me personally, while the visuals are decent to pretty good, the song does have this generic metal band quality. Like really, at the end of the day, when you really listen to the song, it's just a generic metal cover, and I just don't feel that pretty much the song captures the feel and emotion of the show compared to the first opening, and I say this knowing full well that I doubt my opinion would change if they had dubbed this song in Japanese, because I feel if this song was in Japanese, I would have the exact same problem. Hell, even the visuals, for as much as I like them, are in their own way a downgrade. So yeah, it's and when you pretty much look at it's one of those things where when you look at the first opening and place it next to this one, the first opening is kind of better both in just visuals and song. Like I feel the song it captured the good, it captured a pretty for let me put it to you this way, for as much as for as hype as the as for as hype as and exciting as the first opening is, it still managed to capture a relatively good mood of basically what the what the show is about. But with this opening, I really barely got any of that. Like, it's just, yeah, it's pretty much just an extremely generic opening, honestly. Um, well, hell, even the visuals, for as much as I like them, in their own way, are kind of a downgrade. But at the same, but and I think that might have been intentional, because although the thing is, I give the visuals a little bit more of a pass, because I think just downgrading the slight downgrade in the visuals for me is kind of a way in order for David Productions, in order to save on the animation cost. I think that's the intent of it. But yeah. Now the ending, on the other hand, is interesting, because in contrast to the opening, I really like the visuals, even though it's just like a pretty much simple. I really like the visuals of it, but I'm still trying to figure out my thoughts on the song, because I think I like it, but there are moments and verses in the ending song that do kind of throw me off a bit. I still enjoy it a lot better than the opening song, but yeah, there are moments there are moments within the it almost feels like one of those times where, or again, much like the opening, the pretty much ending, it needed a little bit more of a much more subtle, like much more subtle song or something like that. But I still enjoy the song, weirdly enough, even though it kind of has that same feel as the opening. But yeah. Um. Now, getting to the episode itself. the episode officially introduces us to pretty much the scientist who's been associating with Joker as Victor Licht, and that he'll basically be joining Company 8 as their science officer. And the thing about this reveal is that, in many respects, despite how out of left field and sudden it was presented, if you look back on his presence throughout the story thus far, this was an inevitable route that the story would go. Like, we've basically seen we've pretty much seen him, like we've basically seen him before this, even before this, and everything he's been doing, and in a lot of ways, everything we've basically seen of basically Victor, even before he like officially joined, it was kind of one of those pretty much steady build-ups that it was almost building to this moment in time. It was almost building to this moment pretty much. Now, of course, the only lingering question being, with him joining Company 8, is what his connection to Joker is. But other than that, and by a similar token of basically Victor Licht joining Company 8, like Company 8 pretty much seeking out Vulcan in order to become their engineer is actually something that the series has been building on. Honestly, from the very beginning that we were pretty much introduced to Company 8, and from there, like with pretty much Company 8 needing both a science officer and an engineer, these things are things that were reinforced like from the very beginning, and only from the very beginning, and only reinforced as the series went on. Like there are subtle hints and little moments throughout where you can clearly say it's reinforcing that, yeah, like an engineer and a science officer, these are the things that are pretty much needed in order for Company 8, in order for them to continue surviving as a Fire Force company. And honestly, this came to a head especially after the Asakusa incident, because I think, because as you see, like the white clad, they pretty much set Asakusa on fire. Now, and imagine how pretty much more effective Company 8 would have been at preventing this had they just had like a science officer and an engineer at the time. It would have prevented. They could have probably easily prevented this from happening to begin with. And one major thing now. And yeah, let's talk adaptation of the material, because, again, pretty faithful. However, David Production did something odd, which is that in the manga, after Victor is introduced, he unloads on us quite the hefty bit of world building, whereas in the anime, they cut that part out of his introduction in place of jumping ahead to pretty much Vulcan and his workshop and Company 8, like pretty much trying to recruit him. So with this being cut out, it just begs the question of if they'll put it back in at some point, because it is pretty important It is a pretty important, like, it's basically a whole bunch of, what Victor says is just is a front-loaded amount of exposition. But again, it's pretty important exposition that kind of helps that builds the world and whatnot. So yeah, I'm hoping that wasn't cut out completely, and that David Productions is gonna put it in basically another episode or something like that, hopefully. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see for sure. In sort of place of that, however, one major thing we learn is just how greedy and petty that the basically Hajime Corporation and Fire Force truly are. Because, as said, as it was explained in this episode, Vulcan is kind of in a dire situation, because both Hajime and Fire Force have cut him off from pretty much everything he basically needs to do in order to survive as an engineer and in order for his workshop to survive. and basically they did it all because he wouldn't work for them, which not only feeds into an earlier scene of basically seeing Hibana's hesitance towards the whole idea of recruiting him, but in a way this plays off the events of last arc, and particularly like from Benny Mara's flashback, where we saw just how willing the government is just how willing like the Fire Force companies and the government in general is willing to exploit like someone's talent, whether it's from out of fear or self-interest, and and particularly Company 3 in this case, or basically Dr. Giovanni. They're doing the exact same thing here, trying to force Vulcan to join in order to join them, in order to weaponize his talents. Like, let's be real here. When it comes to Company 3 specifically, those guys are shady as shit. Dr. Giovanna, that dude is a mother. That dude is just a serious. That dude is just is basically shady as fuck, and we cannot trust him as far as we can throw him. And yeah, let's actually keep going with basically Company 3 and Dr. Giovanni, because after this episode, this guy just keeps getting more and more like and more on. He just keeps getting more and more shady to the point where, yeah, I think at any point we should probably at any point we need to expect this guy to become a villain, which yeah, that isn't too far off from reality, but we'll get into that another time. But yeah, if the guy doesn't, it's one of those things where if the guy ever becomes a villain, it ain't gonna, if ever real, this guy is an actual villain, it ain't gonna be too, it ain't gonna be too far from the truth, and what of course even puts him further down that path is the reveal that basically Giovanni was an apprentice under Vulcan's grandfather. So yeah, Giovanni has got so many fucking skeletons in the closet that he may as well be he pretty much may as well be like a necromancer or some shit like that. Like yeah, seriously, Giovanni, just fuck you, dude. And yeah. Now, this episode also provides an interesting perspective in the story with Vulcan's dream of restoring the ecosystem, because the thing with basically this whole reveal when it comes to Vulcan and his dream of basically bringing animals back into society and whatnot, it's one of those things where you really don't, where when it comes to a, like with stuff like this, obviously it's one of those things where a pretty much forced, where something like this, it could possibly seem like a bit of a forced, like pretty much pretty much a bit of a forced message or something like that. But on top of the fact that it was incorporated very naturally, it's also one of those things where you kind of think, for as advanced as this society is, when it came to addressing Vulcan's dream, it did make you wonder what was sacrificed in order to make that in order for this society to be this advanced. And it's one of those things where you really don't think about it all that much, because you just assume it's part of how this world worked, that pretty much animals just pretty much don't exist in this world. But this actually kind of shows us a very real world lesson that no matter how much progress is made and how much and no matter what kind of progress it is, for whether it's for the greater good or not, there's always going to be something that's going to be sacrificed in order to make that progress happen. Like there's always going to be something for everything we gain, that there's always going to be something lost, which in a weird way, segue to this, it's an interesting take on the whole. In this case, in order for this society to advance, like pretty much animals and ecosystems were sacrificed from the sounds of it, and which in itself is kind of a peculiar, like, I'm not saying it's copying it or anything, but it's a peculiar it reminds me of the whole and maybe it's just because I'm a major FMA fan, but it reminds me of the whole basically equivalent exchange kind of thing. Like for in order to make society advanced, like animals and ecosystems were more or less sacrificed in this sense. Um, but yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. Dead Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.